Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Russell Bradford, Managing Director of Aston Minerals, who are an ASX-listed junior miner who are in the development phase, advancing their Edleston Project in Ontario, Canada, with a resource of over 2 million tonne of nickel sulphide in the ground. Russell has an extraction metallurgy background with extensive experience in operations, projects, and executive management, and has been in the industry for many years, advancing grassroots projects through advanced exploration and the development of projects during his career across Africa, Australia, Europe. Now he's the managing director of Aston Resources. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the company and what the company are looking to achieve. So welcome, Russell, to the podcast. How you doing, Russell?
Yeah, good, Rob. Thank you. That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. So I just wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about your career, about your background. As I said, that you've got quite an extensive career across many continents. So I'll hand it over to you just to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thanks. I was fortunate enough. I got a bursary with Anglo American in the 80s in South Africa, and I emigrated to South Africa with my parents, and then went through the Anglo system, which was fantastic. Got exposure to all their operating procedures and how their training and everything. Qualified as a metallurgist. Worked on a very large mine in South Africa, and then moved up to Botswana, and then worked for an Anglo mine in Botswana as well, which was a nickel copper mine, large mine, did over 1 million tonnes, had a flash furnace, 3 operating shafts, and processed concentrate, nickel copper concentrate from other mines. And I was in my mid-20s then, and worked there for 10 years to my mid-30s, and then I was transferred over to Australia. That's how I ended up in Australia, and then that was the whole line all thing. And when you're in your 20s and 30s, you just work. You just work and work and work and work. But only later in life you realise what you've learned. At the time, you don't see it as learning. There is a learning, but you work hard. And that mine, a lot of us who worked there, it was BCL. It was a big mine, big facility, and we learned and we worked very hard there. And then I moved to Australia. Been here 2 years. We had 4 mines here, 3 nickel mines and a gold mine, and then the Russell Nickel bought the company for $7 billion. Then got involved with uranium projects in Tanzania, and we developed that over 3.5 years. We sold that for $1 billion. I was the project director on that, so did a lot of the feasibility, the flow sheet development, and that kind of thing. Then got involved with a couple of other things and bits and bobs. And I've always been helping companies put feasibilities together on project work and advice and that. And then got involved with Senko, which was the gold mine the guys built in Ghana. And then that was JV'd with Goldfields in 2019. I've done, just before COVID, we got into a bit of private equity and did over 200 evaluations of companies. And then this year I was at PDAC, and I was presented this opportunity by Evan Cranston and with Tonga, who's one of the directors. Evan's one of the major shareholders. And what I did then, I actually took the opportunity to the group of guys who's on board now. That's Peter, Hugo, Rob, Malcolm, and the guys did DD on it. You know, there's a few highlights, I guess the investment highlights, and we can talk about just now, but we said, look, let's give it a go. It's nothing we've not done before, and it's something that we could probably, with our experience and our learnings over the last 25 years as a group, we could, apply to Aston and see where it goes. So yeah, this is where we are today. I always wanted to be a professional footballer, and it's not going to happen. And I always want to be a professional golfer. It's not going to happen. So I've got to stick to my knitting, right? And it's mining. That's it.
I won't ask you what football team you support.
Well, it's funny because pure coincidence. I'm an Aston Villa fan, and the company's called Aston Minerals. So, at full disclosure, the colours were red and black, and when I came on board, I changed them to claret and blue, which is obviously Aston Villa colours. So I hope that's not put off any potential investors.
No, I don't think so. So yeah, just wondering if you can just tell us about Aston Minerals.
So Aston, look, I mean, it's funny how these things get discovered and come about. So Dale Gin, who was the previous MD who I took over, Dale and his team, where Aston is, it's south of Timmins, north of Sudbury, and it's in that belt where there's some of the largest gold mines in Canada are based. So Dale was drilling for gold, and he found gold. I mean, we've got a 1.5 million ounce gold deposit on our tenement as well. He was drilling for the gold and found gold, and that's a separate story. And then stepped over the fault, and then we started to get sniffs of nickel. And then Dale just went south. And then, this deposit's only been discovered the last 2 years, the Boomerang Deposit. So the guys raised over $20 million beginning of last year, did a 28,000 meter drill program, and hence roll forward 14 months. This is why you've got the maiden resource of nickel. So we've got a 1.5 million ounce gold deposit, and we've got over a billion ton for over, just over 2.2 million tons of nickel in the ground on site as well. So we looked at all of that, and we said, well, it's in Canada, it's a critical mineral. We know the Canadian government have this policy around the critical minerals, and they've listed, and nickel obviously is one of them. It's in a great place to operate. Ontario, big mining state, and they've got some massive mines there. A good management team, a very supportive board. We've got a really good relationship with our First Nation groups. We've got 2 First Nation groups on our project area. So, that was a very big plus as well. So we said, well, look, we've got a bit of a blank piece of paper here. It's very early stage. So we went back to Tolga and Evan. We said, look, we'll come on board. You've got a great nickel team with all this experience and, kind of success. And we'll come on board, we'll do it. It's early stage, but in some respects, that's great because we can do the right thing and mold it to where it needs to be. So yeah, we've just raised $11 million about 3 weeks ago, which was great. Particularly, the market's starting to get pretty tight now here in Australia. So that was from existing shareholders and some new shareholders. We've done quite a bit of marketing before that. So the $11 million now is going to help us get through the next year. It's quite a bit of drilling, quite a lot of development work, flow sheet development work, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're in a good space at the moment. So yeah, it's good. It's exciting.
Obviously you've got the Boomerang deposit, which is obviously a billion ton nickel deposit. Why don't you just give us a quick overview of what you know about the resource at this stage?
Well, essentially, there's two areas. If you can imagine a boomerang, it's like the top bit. So let's talk about the top bit. That's the B2 zone. So the B2 zone, there was drilling done on there. There's, out of that billion tons, there's, about 40% of 30% of the nickel is in that area. We announced just last week, we've been doing a lot of drilling. That's where we're drilling right now. And we've extended that boomerang. So that northern part of the boomerang, we've extended by over 450 meters. So we've got some really, in fact, the highest grade zones that we found during that initial 28,000 meter drilling program is in that north part of the boomerang. So what we're doing up there, we're targeting two areas. We're doing short hole drilling, which is hopefully going to bring these high grade zones up to the surface. And then we're doing long hole, 500, 600, 700 meter hole extensions, which is actually then going to see how far the resource goes down. How big's the pit going to be as such? So that work is ongoing at the moment now. We've drilled 5 holes there at the moment, and we're on the 6th hole. So that's in the northern part. In the southern part, we've got an area. So on the elbow of the boomerang, we know there's some low-grade areas there. And that's fine. We're not going to go there. We don't want to waste time and money drilling where we know already there's some low-grade areas. Then we go to the southern part of the bottom bit of the boomerang. And that's the Bardwell zone. And there's been a lot of drilling done. And we'll be going there probably in about 4 weeks' time. And we'll be doing a lot of infill drilling. We know there's some good high-grade, juicy bits in that area. And, at the moment, out of that billion ton, we've got about 160 million ton in measured and indicated. We want to get that up to, 300 million ton, because then we can start to look to put a study together around it. We're JORC compliant, we're ASX listed. So there's a certain percentage of measured and indicated we need in our resource to kind of talk about some economics as such. So we'll and doing those short hole extensions and those long holes, and then really infilling that section of the ore body. So you roll forward kind of to March next year, we'll have a good understanding of where we need to drop a pit, where the starter pit will be. At the moment now, we don't know that. We've got good drilling information. We spent a bit of time looking at the ore body, and it's important that I get this across. We know that there's areas that won't give you good metallurgy. There's areas that will give you very good metallurgy. So obviously what we've had to do is create like a geomet model. In other words, like a signature, a mineral signature of what this ore body looks like. There'll be some bad areas, there'll be some, okay areas, and there's some, really good areas. So all part of this drilling is targeting and understanding exactly where the high sulfur nickel ratios are, because that's where the best metallurgy will be. Best metallurgy, let's put the pit there and start the mine off in that area. So there's been quite a bit of technical work and let's say reconnaissance and let's say, review done by the group. And we've done that prior to us kind of executing, spending money. That's the, we've announced our plan. And, I think it's been, talking to shareholders, we've all said we're doing the right thing. So I think, that nickel story now and that nickel work plan is off to the races. But just to talk about the gold, exactly what we've done with the nickel, which we've just spent the last 2 months doing. We've got a session in 2 weeks' time with the group to now put a strategy together on the gold, where we're going to drill, what we're going to do, this kind of thing. So do a review, look at the opportunity, and see how we can grow that gold resource as well. So, I mean, we've got 1.5 million ounces at the moment, with some good thinking, and that could easily be 3, 4, 5 million ounces, if we do things right. So we've got quite a lot on our plate, but it's exciting stuff. It's there, right? It's not as if we're looking for it, we found it. What we've got to do now is make this thing, let's say, work. We've got to convert it now into a workable story as such.
Obviously, you recently started as the managing director, at the same time as the new chairman, Peter Breeze. And obviously, the entire management team is obviously quite a lot of talent, because obviously all you guys have worked successfully together before. And it seems that you're bringing the band back together. I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about, obviously, your management team and what you've sort of done in the past, what you have done in the past.
Well, I mean, Peter's been a successful mining leader in his own right. He worked in Zimbabwe, and then I met Peter when I was in Botswana, and then we've kind of worked together from then on. And he's always been there for leadership and guidance. His management style has been one that, he sets the let's say the requirements from his executive, and then puts the tools in place that things can be measured correctly, and allows open communication and I guess mature approach, and just a team approach to how we do things. And I mean, Rob's a mine engineer, Malcolm's a resource geologist. We're all in our mid-50s. Hugo is in his late 50s, early 60s, and Hugo's built quite a few mines in his life, and we've all operated these things, and we've just got this experience, and in some respects, the conversation, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is relatively easy, because it's like, well, what do you think, Rob, when you're talking about mining or, converting or resource, or, Hugo, could you do that? And you're talking about infrastructure, so, and you can tap into previous experiences and previous, let's say, mishaps or previous learnings, or, things that you've done in your career. So yeah, look, I think we've got a really good settled team. And then, we've also got Rob, who's our Indigenous Affairs Manager in Canada. Great guy, great experience, is doing a fantastic job for us. We've also got Carl, who's our geologist in country. Also done, great guy, knows how to operate and manage drilling programs. And, nowadays you need a guy who can then bring all those results together and put them digitally into, Leapfrog or one of these packages. So, Carl can do exactly that. And then our service providers, they're Derouge and our drillers, Core Explorer. And so at the moment, we feel very happy about where everything is. So we as a team, we've got a call just now, in a couple of hours, a technical review. We've brought on Greg Lane, who's Chief Technical Officer for Asenco. So I'm quite happy. We've got mature, in the know, well experienced individuals, and we just scoping this thing out. How are we going to convert this thing into a mine? So yeah, look, I feel much more comfortable having people around you than individually, and not working with people who you don't really know, particularly at this early stage. How many times do you see it? People can, and you kind of go down that path, and then roll forward $3 million later in a year, and it's wrong, right? You've got to be careful with that, because as an MD, you've got to backpedal, you've got to tell shareholders, you've got to, so you're placing trust in people. And I guess that's what Peter's always done, is he's trusted us to do the job. And I suppose that's what I've got to do. I mean, you can't, I've got a job to do. Everyone's got a job to do, so you have to have that accountability, but that trust as well. And I think as a group, we've got that, and that's kind of how we operate. So.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like you've got obviously a good team there. You've obviously worked on nickel mines before. What was Aston's nickel sort of focus or big draw card for you? And I suppose why is this nickel deposit probably different to some of the others that you've worked on before?
Well, I suppose when you've worked in a commodity, you've always got a soft spot for it, right? I've worked in, I mean, my big ones are gold, nickel, copper, I mean, uranium, but I suppose when we looked at this nickel, it's sulphide, so it's not laterite, it's not silicate, or it's sulphide nickel, which is where we got our experience from. So you kind of look at that and you say, okay, I understand this is going to be flotation. It's going to be, I can already picture what the mine's going to look like, what the process plant's going to look like. And so that's a big tick in the box, right? And so does the whole group, so we've all kind of cut our teeth in there. So that was a big, I guess, motivation why, we liked Aston Minerals. I suppose if you're trying to look for similarities with previous operations, with Aston, it's one of these large, lower grade nickel sulphide ore bodies, but it's going to be a big, big mine. Well, we know big mines. We've operated them, and guys have built them. So yeah, there's nothing here that we don't understand. I guess the big difference for us on this project is if there was something a bit different, it's obviously in a cold climate. And I don't think any of us have got much. We've all done little bits in cold climates, but we haven't, we're not Canadian. We haven't worked all our lives in cold climates. So there's something that we're going to have to take guidance from. And that's why we've appointed a Senko out of Canada, right? They'll guide us through that. And we've got Rob as well, in Canada, and Carl. So, and we've all done, let's say, smaller time on cold climate projects, all of us. But there's nothing on this Aston project that's not going to be different from anything we've done before.
And what is the sort of Canadian nickel market like in North America at the moment? What's the sort of current state of play?
I think it's interesting because if you look, I mean, there's almost like a macro environment taking place. In Saudi Arabia, the royal family there's taken a different approach to mining, and they're making direct investment in mining projects. And I suppose it's almost like a strategic kind of equity approach to, diversify from oil and gas. I don't know, but that's my take on it. Well, they took, I think it was 10 or 15% of Vale's nickel business. And a big part of their nickel business is obviously Sudbury, which is just, down the road from where we are. If you look at the nickel space in Canada, I think the nickel space in Canada is going to be quite a significant contributor to the EV space in North America. And why do I say that? My view, and this is Russell speaking, right? And good job we don't have a beer in our hand, because we'll have even a different take on it. But I think, the geopolitical landscape in the nickel game, we all know that Indonesia are doing a great job. Their expansion plans are significant, and they're doing a good job supplying nickel into a particular market. And they do what they do, and that's how that nickel space is going to play out there. And I think there'll be a criteria that nickel off-takers will need to have, depending where that final nickel product's going. With the Indonesian nickel, does that suit everyone's criteria? I don't know. Some people say it does. A lot of people say it doesn't. And I'm talking now about the EV space and that kind of. Then we know what's happening in Russia, and we don't need to talk about that, but there's a big contributor to the nickel environment. And then you look at the Canadian space. Just last week, Ford announced that they are building a $1.2 billion battery plant in Quebec. So you've got the Quebec and Ontario governments supporting that. And with SK involved and this kind of thing. So there's actually tangible action taking place where the Canadian government last year were vocal about their critical minerals policy, nickel being a critical mineral. They are now supporting these manufacturing downstream processes, factories, industries, massive investments. And, being in that nickel space, that's great for us, right? They'll need feed. And I think, first of all, we're on their doorstep. It is Canadian. So if you look at where these different kind of sectors of nickel supply are starting to play out in the world, being in Canada, if we can prove that we can make this into a mine, and you've got kind of the A team behind you, I think we'll be in a good space, right? I think we'll get good support, good government support for capital, a strategic support. And, this is a mine, if you look at the resource, could be, in my mind, the numbers I've done, this is a 40,000 tonne a year nickel mine for 40 years. That's a strategic, critical asset that I think being in Canada, is something that it will be a major contributor to that new world that we're going into, electric vehicles, decarbonisation, all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of my thinking on it at the moment.
And obviously, someone that's obviously done this before, what's the secret sauce for getting a nickel mine into development and then obviously into production?
Well, there's a few things. This is, again, my take on life. I think, it's important you understand whose back garden you're working in. I think you have to be respectful where you're working. And, in the places where we've worked around the world, it's always important to make sure that you have good, relations with your, First Nation groups, your Indigenous groups, your let's say your tribal groups, or wherever you're working, you've got to understand when in Rome, be respectful for that, continue that communication, that relationship, and build the mine or do the development with the rules of engagement in that back garden, right? So that, to me, that's something that you need to understand. That can set you back a long time. In fact, you may never ever build the mine if you get that wrong. I think as well, it's important to understand your ore body. We talk about nickel, we talk about gold, we talk about whatever the commodity is, but it's the drilling that really gives you that information. So have good quality geological interpretation. There's been a lot of times when guys have mined a deposit and it's not come out the way that you thought it would because the geological interpretation's been wrong. The structural geology has not been understood. The mineral, kind of distribution's not been properly understood through the drilling. So, can you ever do enough drilling? I don't think you ever can. I think the only way, one thing I'd love to invent one day is those X-ray specs that I saw, you can put them on and look through things. And one thing I'd love is to look through the ground and see where the ore bodies are, but we don't have that. So the only other thing we've got is the drilling. So, you know, drilling's a big thing that you need to focus on. It gives you a lot of good information, and it only gives you good information if you've got good geologists to interpret it. And I think as well, you've got to spend time understanding the flow sheet and the variability that the flow sheet can handle. You know, all bodies are never consistent. They do give variability. So make sure your flow sheet gives a robust outcome, you know, and it can handle, you know, these plus and minuses that it will see through the life of the mine. And I think as well, you've just got to make sure that, you know, don't be, you know, don't be shy to make, you know, the reality that, you know, there's inflation in the world, and there's you know, the shortage of people, and you know, don't underestimate how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost to develop a mine. You know, often you see studies and things, and people say, oh, you know, this thing's going to get built in 10 months and it's going to cost, you know, $40 million and this and that. And you get found out, right? And, you know, always, you know, whatever it is, that's what you've got to be truthful about. And I think the proper investors and the proper people who understand the value that's going to come out one day from developing that mine will appreciate that type of communication and language. Often you sit in presentations and you listen to people, some people, and you know, it's just not right what they're saying. So I think you have to be truthful. During project development, there's always bumps in the way. There's always bumps in the way. And, you know, if there isn't, then one's coming without a doubt. So you know, I think it's between relationship with the back garden you're in, you've got to make that right. Just when you drill, make sure that information gets interpreted correctly, your flow sheet, and, you know, just be truthful in what you're finding and where you are. And then I think you'll go a long way to getting the thing right.
Yeah. And lastly, what's the short and medium term outlook for Aston Minerals?
Well, short term, so we're drilling at the moment up in B2. We're actually doing a drilling review tonight, and then we'll be moving the rig down to Bardwell probably in about 4 weeks' time. The network, all the samples are being selected now. The network's going to kick off probably in the next 3 weeks. I'll be doing a bit of marketing between now and Christmas. As I said in the announcement last week, as we get drill results, as we see what we're seeing, we'll be continuing to get that news flow out. So short term, yeah, that's really our focus over the next 6 months. Medium term, what we said to the market is we'll do all of this work. If you roll forward to April, May next year, we would have done the drilling. We would have had a flow sheet put together. We understand recovery. We would have dropped a pit, you know, in the first 10 years or whatever it is that we know we can start this mine. And then all of that information will roll up, and then we'll go and do a scoping study. So I would say probably, you know, the end of next year, we'll have a scoping study out on this project. But all the work we're doing now will all feed into that scoping study. We'll have that scoping study out, and then you'll see the economics. But I mean, this thing's going to be a big mine, long life, big output of nickel. So, you know, I'm expecting that, you know, we should get a real understanding if it's a boy or a girl in about a year's time, to be honest with you.
Russ, really appreciate your time. Thank you for giving us an update on Aston Minerals, and obviously your outlook of the company, and obviously talking about the nickel mining industry within North America. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, if they want to follow your story, how can they go about doing that? And what social media platforms are you on?
So we're on Twitter, Aston Minerals. You can drop me an email. That's russell@astonminerals.com. We are on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so send me a message. And there's all the other Instagram and that kind of thing, and that's all the ones that I don't do, and I don't do any of them, so I have to. But
No, that's all right.
Send it to russell@astonminerals.com, and I'll get it. So
yeah, we'll include all those in the show notes accompanying this anyway, so people can have easy access to that. Well, wish you all the best for the remainder of the year. Perhaps we can get you on next year with an update. We're also talking about potentially doing another podcast on another subject associated with mining, but outside of mining as well. But we'll work on that anyway. But really appreciate your time and all the best for the year.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Rob. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Great to meet you.
And yourself. And thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please share this episode with all others in the industry, and also obviously people outside of the industry. Nickel was obviously an important component of our whole battery transition and new green energy transition. So please share this episode amongst others around the world, plus obviously people within the industry. Really appreciate your continued support. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.